Couple things. Number one, I want you all to know that your state has done a great job with our portion of the economic recovery. I mean, you got the governor and the DOT have really done a great job in implementing the program, getting the money spent, getting contracts, getting people to work. Certainly on the airport side of things, and I have some figures for you on that. If you'd like them, I'll be happy. I got some, we can give you some the specifics. I mean, I could read it to you, but my point is that Missouri has done very well. And I know there were some complaints right in the beginning that people thought maybe it was disproportionate, and I talked to the mayor about that last night, but I think we straightened that out, and I think people seem to be pretty happy with the way the money's being spent.
Mr. Secretary, as you travel around the Missouri side of the metropolitan area, you may have noticed that a significant number of the bus stops around town have little sleeves over them saying that they have been taken out of service because of funding problems with our public transportation system here. I understand you're putting in a good word for Missouri in terms of its efficiency and being ready with projects and achieving that sort of primary purpose of stimulus money, of getting money out into the world. But we've been deeply critical of the way that Missouri has handled that money and transportation money generally in terms of transportation policy. We have a transportation system, a public transportation system here in St. Louis that serves tens of thousands of people, that is almost entirely supported in terms of operating costs locally. The state of Missouri contributes less than $5 million. Until recently they put a little money up just so that some of these routes could be reopened. It was a very hot summer for thousands of St. Louisans who could not get their way to work because of cuts in the transportation system.
Primarily transit, or
bus service and Metrolink, which is our light rail system. And I understand that there's a reluctance from your agency to fund things other than capital improvements. That once you go down the road of supporting operating costs, that can be a slippery slope, and you may end up having more commitments than would be reasonable in terms of federal policy. But we have a system here, and I'm presuming that federal policy on transportation supports the idea of robust public transportation in urban areas that help with air quality and move people to jobs, and that we become less reliant on cars in densely populated areas. And in terms of the local taxpayer, we have supported that. But Missouri does not support that. Missouri has one of the worst records of support of public transportation in the country. Now, maybe you don't want to tell Missouri how to run its transportation, but if federal money is coming to Missouri for transportation purposes, and they are ignoring a key part of what is thought to be, where they should be going, is there any way that that your agency, through incentives or otherwise, could encourage Missouri to throw a few crumbs to its public transportation systems?
Of course we can. Yeah, and what?
How do you do that?
By talking to them, and they come to us for money, and we have an obligation if they're short-circuiting or short-changing certain parts of the state to talk to them about that. But I think, and you probably know this, in a bill that passed this year, it allows for 10% of the money to be used for operating now. And you know what? I support that. And if you look at testimony that I've given at the Senate hearings, this idea that you allow transit districts to buy all kinds of new buses and you don't have the money to pay the bus drivers is silly. I don't support that. And Congress doesn't either. And that's why Congress now has allowed 10% of the money to go for operating. And I think under an authorization bill, you'll see that get made permanent. If it's up to me, it'll be made permanent because I think it's a good idea.
Because we had a genuine crisis, and we still do here in terms of public transportation, a one-time short-term emergency funding of about $14 million, I think that's right, was appropriated that allowed Metro to restore part of the routes that had been canceled just through the summer of next year, pending a chance to vote on a sales tax increase, and that was, considered to be a very big deal that the state legislature, deigned to give a little bit of money to it. But it is very discouraging when you're trying to get some things done in our cities, and you have people, and I live in the city, and I see people standing at bus stops because the buses now during some periods run every hour and 15 minutes where they had been 20 minutes before. These are real people that aren't able to get to work, in large part because the state of Missouri has let them down and does not support public transportation. Local taxpayers have supported it, but they can't do it all themselves, and they shouldn't be asked to. And I'm hoping that the Department of Transportation can do something.
We'll look into it. I hope you'll take account of the fact that the transit has gotten an enormous amount of money. Now, maybe you don't think it's been spent the right way. And, the value of a meeting like this is that's something that we can have our transit people come out here and begin to work with your folks on that. But it's not for a lack of money. And it's not for a lack of change of policy. This 10% is a big deal, as you have indicated. And it's been a lifeline for a lot of transit districts around the country. And it's something that we've supported. We are pushing very hard for livable communities, and transit and high-speed rail and alternatives to automobiles are a big part of that. One of our big initiatives is livable communities, and the way we implement that is through a very strong transit program, a high-speed rail program, and as a part of transit, that's light rail, it's buses, it's walking paths, it's jogging paths, it's providing people. In a city like St. Louis, you can't transform. You're not going to transform the whole community, but you can transform neighborhoods. It's been done in other communities the size of St. Louis, and Chairman Oberstar has a provision in his bill for livable communities. We continue to highlight it every day. We think it's what the people want. This transit issue that you raise, to be honest with you, it's the first time I've heard it. And I'm not saying, this is only my first visit since I've been in this job to Missouri. But I've talked to a lot of the members of your delegation. I've talked to Ike Skelton earlier on when this mess was created about more of the money going to rural than urban. And I've talked to Emmanuel Cleaver many times about projects that, he has an interest in. And Joanne Emerson's a good friend. She and I talk on a regular basis. Kid Bond is on a couple of the committees that have jurisdiction over DOT, and he and I probably met at least once a week. And I'll be honest with you, I've never heard this transit issue before, but I'm just saying I take your point on it, and we'll get on top of it.